live in the UK, and it's not important where. And this happened to me when I was 22. I'm 28 now, but I remember it was like yesterday. One night, me and a few mates went out to a local pub for the night. Now, the pub isn't too far from my flat, or apartment for back in the States. It was around 11:50, and the pub closed at 12, so I ended up getting kicked out. Remember, I don't live too far from the pub, so I got pretty wasted. Now, I can easily just walk down the street, and it would have been much quicker. But there's a walk around through the woods behind the pub and my flat. I don't know why I decided to go around this way, but I figured if I was drunk, I don't want the cops stopping me and hitting me with being drunk in public. So I thought I would avoid them altogether and just go around. Now, the woods behind my flat and the pub are thick, and you could easily get yourself lost if you're not careful. We don't have much of crazy wildlife like other countries do, but we have a fair share of wild animals. I started to walk through the woods, and you know that feeling you get when you're really wasted and that liquid courage kicks in? Well, I just all of a sudden started feeling invincible, and I started howling like a wolf. I know, it was really weird, but I thought it was funny at the moment. But all of a sudden, I heard something howl back. Now, I know for a fact that we don't have wolves, or coyotes, or even wild dogs in this area, so I thought it was one of my mates messing with me. But I was dead wrong. About 30 to 40 feet in front of me appeared to be a wolf, but no wolf I've ever seen. This wolf was huge, and he was standing on his hind legs. He kind of looked like one of those wolves from Harry Potter, but far more muscular and far bigger. It just stood there looking at me. I have never sobered up so quickly in my entire life. I felt absolute fear, and something told me, even if I was to run, this thing would have caught me. The only thing I could think of at the time was, and I know this sounds crazy, was to howl again. And it worked. This thing just stood at me, and I swear, it nodded its head at me, and walked away. I have never run so quickly. I got back to my flat, and I almost started crying. I don't know what I saw, but if werewolves are real, I saw one. My hometown is really nothing to write about. This happened last summer. I'm in college now and getting my degree in marine biology, far from what I'm used to. There's a lot of people in my town while they're working in factories. Now, this incident happened to me when I went home to visit my parents, as me and my husband wanted to take a vacation and visit old friends and family. I guess you could call us high school sweethearts. Everyone knew us. Now, like I said, my hometown is really small. It's like one of those towns everyone knows everyone. I joke about it being one of those Hallmark movie kind of towns, but it really is a small town and everyone knows everything about everybody. So, getting back to the story, one night, a couple of my husband's friends and my friends got together to have a little coming home celebration. There's a small creek about a mile into the woods from where my house is, and back in the day, that's where we used to party, so I guess for old time's sake, me and my husband thought it would be really nice. So we got out there, and it was about 8 o'clock, and it was just getting dark. And we spent a good amount of the night just drinking and bringing back old memories. As the night started dying down, and everyone started leaving, me and my husband decided that we would call it a night. We brought a tent out there, and we were going to camp out there for the night. Thought it was kind of romantic. It was honestly a beautiful night. Not a cloud in the sky and a bright moon to kind of bring in the romantic feeling. After having, some fun, we got into our tent and got into our sleeping bags. I had passed out pretty quickly after drinking so much. It must have been like 1 o'clock or so in the morning. I remember looking at my phone, and I heard something outside the tent. At first, I thought it was my husband, so when I wanted to call him, I quickly realized he was right next to me. So I attempted to wake him up, and I can tell you, he's not an easy guy to wake up. I mean it, I swear, I could set firecrackers off in front of this guy while he's sleeping and it still wouldn't wake him up. So I walked up to the zipper and slowly opened it, thinking I was going to see a bear, maybe a person. It wasn't a bear, or a person. Standing about 10 feet from the tent was this wolf-like creature. I say this because it was a wolf, but it was standing on its hind legs, and it was huge. It was literally sitting there with my backpack in its hands and going through my stuff. And Yeah, I ripped the backpack open like it was nothing. I knew, at this point, both of us were in major trouble. There was no way we were going to outrun this thing, or outfight it. And when I say this thing was big, it had to be between 8 to 9 feet tall and built like a bodybuilder. As I was about to scream, my husband wrapped his hands around my mouth and drew me back into the tent. With a finger over his mouth, he told me to shh. I really thought we were dead by then. And as we just laid there, and this thing started heading towards our tent, we heard a howl in the distance. We watched this thing look up and just run off. And when I say run off, it ran like a person on its hind legs. But I've never seen anything run so fast. It was gone. And that's when we decided to run for the truck. We ran out of there, started the truck up, and peeled out of there. We never told anyone the story. Word gets around real quickly where I'm from, and we didn't want to be labeled as crazy. I don't know what we saw, but if someone here could please explain to us, did we see a werewolf? I would like to start my story by saying I'm not making this story up, because I know so many find this story hard to believe, but maybe a little credibility to myself will help you understand. I've worked in law enforcement for well over 20 years. After hurting my leg in a pretty bad shootout, if that's what you want to call it, I needed to retire. Luckily for me, I retired with a pretty good pension. After about 4 months of living it up, so to speak, I started growing bored with life and needed to find another job, or go back into something. So I went online and searched Indeed. I came across an armed security for a local park. Technically, I would be kind of a park ranger and simply enforce rules on the campground. And I was able to attain my arresting powers again. Everything felt good and started falling back into place for me. The job was pretty easy compared to my old line of work. All I was really dealing with young kids that didn't understand one is enough. I would just confiscate the liquor and kick them off the campground, as the campground had a strict no drinking rule. Before joining law enforcement, I was in the U.S. Army Special Forces. I have grown up to be a no bullcrap type guy, so to speak, hard around the edges. So seeing is believing for me, and I really never believed in this paranormal stuff. So this actually happened recently, and I turned to the internet before getting my head checked. It was around 1 a.m. I worked the overnight shift, but I will pick up shifts here and there, so I was working at 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I usually do my rounds every 2 hours or so. If I'm not doing my rounds, I'm sitting up in the watchtower watching the game or watching old movies. As I was sitting there searching through the movies on YouTube, I heard a howl. Now, this may seem normal to everyone, and I am no expert, but I know my wildlife around these parts fairly well, being a hunter almost my entire life. And I know coyote, and I know wolves, and I know wild dogs. But this howl, it was far deeper and seemed far bigger. I know it's hard to explain, but it just sent chills up my spine. I stepped out on the balcony of the watchtower, and I swear, just like I have a horror movie, I saw something like 12 or so deer run past me, a few foxes, and a couple bunnies. And I know this sounds crazy, and this is what I saw. Obviously, they were afraid of something I just couldn't see. I began to hear movement through the tree line. Now, whatever's running through the trees sounded like a freaking bulldozer. I'm not kidding. So I ran back into the watchtower, grabbed an AR-15 from the gun locker, and ran back to the deck. I was absolutely frozen in fear, and I looked down to see a wolf-like creature. Now, I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy, but I fear no man. But whatever was at the bottom of that watchtower was no wolf or man, but a combination of the both. Something told me, even if I was to pull the AR and pull the trigger, I would be the one regretting it. Luckily for me, this thing didn't take notice to me. Well, so I thought. I saw this thing start sniffing the air, and it looked up at me. I could see into its eyes, and they were more human-like than wolf. And I swear, this is when it gets weird. Oh, weirder. This thing smiled at me, and shook its finger, like to say, no, no, and it ran off. Before anyone says, oh, it was just a costume, that's great, but that doesn't explain those fear in those animals. And why would someone go to great lengths to make such an extensive costume? And I have to say, how easily it was for this thing to maneuver through the tree lines. Without MVDs, nor a flashlight, it would have smashed into the trees. And I really don't know what I saw. But, like I said, I don't believe in anything paranormal. But whatever that thing was, feared no man. And I would have lost, even if I went up to this thing. Maybe I will get my head checked. This is something that happened to me and my dad several years ago, and I will never forget it. My dad and I used to go on long hunting trips. We would typically spend a few days camping out and just enjoying nature. Now, my dad was definitely one of those guys you just don't want to mess with, and I have never seen that man afraid of anything. And that is up until you bring this up. This took place in November of 2016, and I had just turned 14, and for my birthday, my dad wanted to take me on a hunting, fishing trip. Just us guys getting away from the craziness of life. I won't give up the location, but I can tell you this place is amazing, and a good place for a good-sized buck. We set up camp about 8 p.m. after a good day of hiking, and just enjoying nature. We had caught ourselves a good-sized fish, hit up a nice fire, and began to cook. I remember being really tired and nearly passing out after dinner. We both just got into his tent, and I don't think I've ever fell asleep so fast in my life. I think I was just overtired from the hike that day, but also, being out in nature is, well, it's amazing, and it's so peaceful. I don't know what time it was, but I was awoken to the sound of howling. Now, this could easily be explained over by just a pack of wolves, but something just about this howl was off, and I can only explain it like it was unworldly. An unworldly howl that just gave me the chills. So I woke my dad up to tell him, thinking it was a possible pack of wolves heading our way. Now, wolves are curious creatures, but they're really no danger to humans. But 10 or so of them, were on the losing streak there. I told my dad, and he wakes up and grabs his gun, and opens the tent, and he literally just jumps back into the tent. So I crawled over to the zipper of the tent that was halfway open at this point. What I see is a wolf, but not like any other. It was standing up, and it had its back towards us. It was all white, and it actually reminded me of one of those werewolves from like the Underworld movie. It was just standing there until it turned its head to me, and just gave me the most evil look I've ever seen in my entire life. It just turned around and started walking away. And I felt like nothing. Like, if this thing took me, I would have been dead. And quick. I couldn't move. I couldn't say a word. I just watched this thing disappear into the night. After that, we didn't sleep, and we just waited for sunlight. And that very morning, we looked around for signs of anything. We found several scratches on the trees from massive claws and footprints. Massive footprints. They had walked out into the woods, and we followed them a little bit. And here where it gets really weird. The tracks were definitely of wolves, or a wolf, but they started turning human. We ended up leaving that morning, and we haven't been camping since. Whether you believe the story or not, that's up to you. But in my head, in my dad's, this really happened. I didn't even know where to start this story or how to even begin. I've been watching YouTube videos all week because I seriously can't explain what I saw. Like most small towns, we have several urban legends, and a lot of the local kids call the local woods, or part of it, werewolf woods, and for a good reason. My older brother was one of the lucky few to have actually experienced these woods for what they are. Now, I really have to believe my brother because he was always playing jokes on me, but that has now changed. This happened to me and one of my friends several nights ago. Of course, we wanted to prove my brother wrong, and a lot of our friends are the local legends. Supposedly, they were a pack of werewolves that roamed the woods in search for prey. I just thought it was nothing more than people seeing coyotes or wild dogs or something else. Definitely not a werewolf, or werewolves. Of course, we waited for a full moon night just to add to the spook factor. So we drove out there and we walked the rest of the way, getting lost a little bit. We eventually came upon a massive open field, the one everyone was talking about. We found a really comfortable place and sat down. I looked down at my phone and it was 12 o'clock or so. Just when I went to show my friend this funny Snapchat my friend had sent me, we heard a distant howling. Now, at first, I just laughed and thought, oh, more coyotes. But it was just one howl, and I'm definitely no animal expert, but they usually travel in packs, right? So, as we both sat there on this rock, we saw a figure appear from the tree line. If I had to guess, it was about 40 to 50 feet away from us, and whatever this thing was, it looked massive. Even from our vantage point, I couldn't make out a shape, and a figure. This thing looked like a German shepherd, just bigger, and it was standing on its hind legs. It just stood there, looking around and sniffing the air, and then it looked right at us, and it gave out this ungodly growl, and started to give chase. Both of us screamed and started to run. Now, this thing covered ground in a matter of seconds, and before I knew it, I could literally feel its breath on my neck. In that very moment, the only thing I could think of how I was going to die, and how badly this was going to hurt, when all of a sudden, that thing just stopped. And I had noticed that we had gotten out of the tree line, and our car was no more than 10 feet away from us. And, well, that's where the story ends. We got out of there pretty quickly. Now, I have a couple questions that I will never be able to answer. Why did it stop? Why didn't it kill us when it had the chance? And what the hell was it? Several nights ago, just to have some context, I work for a security company at a warehouse. So I just sit there in a guard shack from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a pretty long shift. But anyways, I was just sitting there, and out of nowhere, I see this wolf, but not like anything I've ever seen. It was walking on its hind legs, and just casually walked by the shack, looked at me, and walked into the woods. I would like to note that wolves are not native to this area, and this wolf was much larger than I've ever seen. It kind of looked like one of those wolves from the Harry Potter movie, or your typical horror movie werewolf. Since then, I've heard howling from where I'm sitting. I can only see so much into the woods from where I'm sitting, but I swear, something's watching me every single night. Everyone I tell this story to said it was a costume, or maybe wolves do actually walk on their hind legs. Yet, I keep telling them this wolf was much bigger, and the way it walked was so human-like, yet it was no costume. Can anyone please explain to me what I saw? If it was a werewolf, do you think it's a threat to us? Or do you think this is a normal wolf? Do they really walk on their hind legs? And why was it so big? I really think I saw a werewolf. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. This was some really cool stories everyone sent in, and I'm a huge fan of werewolves. I am, definitely not skeptical when it comes to werewolves. I just don't know how to explain them. Is there misidentification of what people are seeing? Is there a species of werewolves that we have yet to discover? All this different speculation, but it's really cool and exciting to think that someone has the ability to transform into these gigantic wolves, so to speak. Let me know down at the bottom of the comments what you guys think of these stories. What do you think? What do you think werewolves are, and why haven't we seen more of them? And don't forget to like and subscribe to my videos. There's going to be another story coming up. Next, I'm looking for haunted schools. So if you have a story about haunted schools, send that in at alexuni101@gmail.com. Again, that's alexuni101@gmail.com. And happy hauntings.